Greetings and welcome to this guided meditation and Dharma talk. My name is Jonathan Foust. Thank you for making the time to be here. Before we launch, a couple thank yous. First of all, I'd like to thank our mindful movement teacher for today. Also, a big thank you to Ray and Tara, who offer the mindful dialogue after this session. And just a reminder, or if you're new, just to let you know that if you'd like to put together a whole smorgasbord experience, you can start off the evening with mindful movement as a way to prepare for meditation. That's at 6:30, and then go right into the live stream meditation and talk. And then after, if you'd like to connect with like-minded, really good people facilitated in the space that's really well done and juicy, you can join Ray and Tara for mindful dialogue, where you can talk about the talk about your practice, hear from others. You can find out information about all of this on my Facebook page and on my website. Also, I could not let this pass without thanking Glenn Harrison and Leo Gimo for producing this evening. It takes a lot to be able to put this together and get it out there. As well, thank you to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for hosting this class, and to my good friends at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Arlington, Virginia, which has been the host for Monday Night Meditation for many years, and someday we'll get back there again. If you'd like to find out about upcoming talks or review past talks or have my photography and video inflicted upon you, you can sign up for my mailing list. There's a weekly class for this class and also a monthly that goes out with resources for your practice and so forth. So you can check that out on my website. And also, just to let you know that it's really my pleasure to offer this. It's so gratifying to know that these meditations and talks are helpful for people all around the planet. It's offered freely, so no one is ever denied access to these teachings in accordance with the guidance in the Buddhist tradition. Generosity is also encouraged, and you can, if you feel inspired, you can make a donation to support me, not only in my lavish lifestyle, but to help me cover the costs of getting these talks out there. That's a fair bit of production and so forth. So thank you for that. All my talks are available online, and it's just so gosh darn satisfying to be able to share these practices and teachings and hear from people all over. Thank you for being here, and may this meditation and Dharma talk serve. That is my highest intention. Tonight's exploration is going to be around embracing a sense of not knowing. And we're going to bring this into our meditation. What does it mean to actually embrace the sense of the mystery? How much do we really know? You could say all we really know is right here and right now. So we'll be exploring this in the following meditation. So what you might like to do in order to prepare yourself for meditation is to make sure you won't be disturbed. Make sure that your cell phone is on stun. And let your animals and your people know that you are going to be taking it internal for a little bit. It's also very helpful to be aware of posture. So as you're ready, you might just close your eyes and take stock of how you're feeling on the inside right now. Is there any little adjustment to your posture that might be supportive for you? In fact, let's do this brief little non-aggressive stretch for kind of realigning your posture. If you've meditated with me before, you probably know this one. Make your hands into the hitchhiker position. Your thumbs pointing up, and then point the thumbs behind you. Bring your thumbs about level with your elbows. Now there's no strain in this posture, no strain. That is to say, if I didn't make that clear, you shouldn't be straining at all. You might draw your navel in toward your spine and lift up out of the waist. Open the elbows out to the side and slightly behind you, but again, no strain. Here comes the contraction part. Actively now draw your shoulder blades close together and draw your shoulder blades down. You can feel that. Now you're going to try and hold the contraction here. And if you'd like, you can close your eyes. And if you would, take a nice, long, slow, deep inhalation to the count of 4 or 5. And then glide right into the exhalation to the count of 4 or 5. And if you can, kind of keep this flow going, an uninterrupted breath. You're holding the contraction, drawing your shoulder blades close together. And what's happening here, as you hold the contraction between the shoulder blades, and as you open the elbows out to the side with no strain, you're taking the slack out of these muscles that get chronically lengthened, and you may find they're going to reset a little bit. At the same time, as you're contracting the shoulder blades, and as you breathe, you might imagine you're breathing your heart forward. You might imagine that you're drawing the breath all the way up under your collarbones, so you're inflating the upper lobes of the lungs. You're gently lengthening the muscles that get chronically shortened. And you want to do this for about a minute, and it's been about a minute, but let's take one more long, slow, deep breath in. Hold that contraction at the shoulder blades, and now reach your arms up overhead. Stretch up to the left side, the right side. And now take a moment just to feel your palms above. Relax your palms, fingers, and thumbs. And depending on how adventurous you are, you can do this as a slow motion release. You can do it moderately slow, or you can do it super slow. And as you're ready, let the hands begin a slow motion descent down toward your lap. There's no hurry, they're here, there's no rush. Relax and feel. Can you sense the micro movements of your hands as they make their way through space? Can you sense this quality of deep relaxation and at the same time being concentrated? And no matter where your hands are, no matter where they are, if they've come to rest or if they're still in transit, take a few moments just to notice the aliveness in the palms and fingers and thumbs. Can you sense as you soften any sense of pulse or tingling? Any subtle energy or vibration here? One of the essential elements of our practice is exploring a sense of deep relaxation and receptivity on the inside. And you might feel your forehead smooth. With your awareness, you might scan through the muscles of your face and just sense how much could you relax and soften the muscles of your face. Feel the inside of your mouth. And could you relax or soften the lips? If you relax your tongue and let it fill the floor of the mouth, could you also now begin to soften your jaw and let your jaw hang from your skull? And as we continue sensing on the inside, just move your attention to any body part I mentioned and sense if it's possible to relax, soften, or let go. Sensing the base of the skull, the back of the neck and the tops of the shoulders. Letting awareness flow down the arms, from the shoulders down through the elbows. Elbows down through the wrists. You might again let your awareness flood into your palms, fingers, thumbs, backs of the hands, and just soften and feel. The lungs and the heart. And the lower back and buttocks. And the belly. And sensing now the lower abdomen and down through the floor of the pelvis. And feeling now the legs, the weight of the legs as you sense from the hip joints down through the knees. The knees down through the ankles. And as if you could sense from the inside, the tops of the feet and the toes. The soles of the feet and the heels. What could relax or soften inside right now? And sensing this field of aliveness, of sensation, of receptivity. And you might now direct your attention to an anchor of your choosing, a focal point. For some, it may be the breath, the sense of the breath at the nostrils or belly or wherever you feel the breath the most predominant. Or you might elect to follow the sounds around you, the real-time sound vibrations as they're happening. And yet another option is to again soften and feel the palms, fingers, and thumbs and the backs of the hands. Notice the sense of aliveness inside and use this as your anchor. Whatever anchor you choose. For this next period of time in this meditation, let this be your primary focal point. When you wake up with the mind far away, notice how gently you can escort your attention back to breath, sound, feeling, back to the experience of the here and now on the inside. In this phase of practice, you begin again and again, noting when the mind has wandered into the past or future. Invite your attention back, relax, arrive. And as you sense your anchor, over the next 3 breaths, how intimately can you experience it? And you might refresh your sense of your anchor or your focal point and just sense if it's possible to use the mind in a concentrated way, but simultaneously to sense if you could relax, if you could soften and feel the imprint, feel the effect. And you might now widen and broaden your attention beyond your anchor. Can you sense now everything that is changing? And is it possible to note what is changing and at the same time to sense this seat of the witness, your capacity to observe without grasping or pushing away? And as you continue, you might explore what it's like to relax deeply, use your anchor to draw attention into the here and now, and then very gently widen and broaden your attention to this awareness of change and who you are in this seat of the observer. You might inquire, am I dreaming? In these remaining 5 minutes or so, you might refresh your practice. What could relax or soften on the inside? Could you, again, relax your tongue and jaw? The lower back and buttocks and belly? The soles of the feet and the heels? The palms of the hands? Fingers and thumbs and backs of the hands? You might refresh your anchor. Over the next 3 breaths, how intimately can you feel the anchor on the inside? Can you sense this seat of the witness, your capacity to observe what is changing? And you might very gently release any practices of doing. Let the anchor fall away. Let any sense of control fall away. And explore what it's like to move into this practice of resting in presence. Letting things be. What could relax or soften or let go right now? What could relax or soften or let go even more? And deeply relaxed, at the same time alert. Letting all things be as they are. You might notice now where you feel the breath on the inside, sensing the effortless, relaxed, free-flowing breath. And you might very gently begin to lengthen, deepen, smooth out the breath, opening your attention again to the sounds around you, the space in the room. Just noting the quality of presence, honoring what may have shifted over this meditation. And with your eyes closed, you might let your head drift a little bit to the left and right. You might sense how your body might like to move and give yourself permission to move and stretch in any way that feels good. Taking your time for your transition. And you might like to stretch your arms up overhead, reach up to the left side, the right side, let out any sounds. Welcome. There's a classic teaching story of a debate between a Korean master and a Tibetan master. And both masters were there in the robes of their orders with their assistants. And the Korean master reached forward very dramatically, took an orange out of a bowl of fruit, held it up, and said, "What is this?" It's kind of a classic way to begin a debate. What is this thing? The Tibetan master was kind of puzzled and whispered to his assistant, and they just kind of sat there looking at him. And according to the story, at least according to the story the way I tell it, the Tibetan teacher said the Korean teacher said a little more fiercely, "What is this?" Again, the Tibetan master conferred with his translator, and finally the translator said, "He doesn't know that's an orange? Where does he come from?" Another great teacher, Adida, famously said that no one really knows what anything really is or how it came to be. There's truth. There's deep truth in that. What do we really know? What I'd like to talk about tonight is about what it means to embrace not knowing in your practice and in your life. 4 parts, as usual. The first is to explore a little bit around the desire to know and the desire to understand, which is kind of baked into our brains. And second, a little bit on how your mind is constantly manufacturing stories. Part 3, the practice of what does it mean to question the mind? What does it mean to question the stories that come out of the mind? And finally, part 4, what does it mean to embrace the practice of not knowing? Like embracing the fact that we really don't know what anything is or how it came to be. I'm imagining with the elections, you may have experienced a few ups and a few downs. It's always interesting to me looking at how headlines are designed, and they're designed to get you to click on them. And they're usually designed as questions. Are we experiencing a coup? Will the Democrats blow it this time? Will everything you assume is good and true be completely destroyed and your hope of essential basic goodness and of humanity be crushed? Okay, I made up that last one. But these headlines are designed to feed on our insecurity. And they're designed to feed on our sense of wanting to know, wanting to figure things out. And I'm imagining when you think about what it's been like for you over the last weeks or months, you may have noticed that you have a response to what's happening. Perhaps the clench when you think everything's going terribly. The sense of relief you feel inside when you think it's okay. And maybe at times the sense of feeling inspired when something really good happens. I think that this practice of waking up is all about this interplay of knowing and not knowing. We have this very, very deep desire to satisfy our wanting to know. And for many of us, we turn to religion. We're looking for a path or a teacher or a philosophy or a tradition that will explain it all. And some traditions are a closed loop. Everything you need to know is found within the confines of that system. As I was thinking about this, I was thinking about when I was in college, I worked as a roofer for the summer. And the guy I was working for was a fundamentalist evangelical Christian. And he was on me all the time, trying to convert me. And at one point, we were tarring the roof of a gas station in Beloit, Wisconsin. And he was just turning the words onto me, like just preaching at me really, really hard. He was just swinging his tar mop and giving me the gospel. And to be honest, I was really touched by his passion. I was touched that he really cared about me. But then I asked him, well, what about the 1.5 billion Muslims? and the 1 billion Hindus and the 500 million Buddhists. What about them? Are they bad people? Are they going to hell? And he stopped and he said, he looked me in the eyes and he said, "You're going to hell, boy." He just turned, and that was that. So I was not converted on that gas station roof in Beloit, Wisconsin. But I did spend many years in spiritual community that was somewhat also being in a closed loop system. I didn't have to go outside the system because everything was kind of explained inside it. And this is kind of fitting in the context of sort of yoga philosophy. It was a big loop. The loop included awakening and enlightenment and all that good stuff, but everything fit into that particular system, this kind of yogic view. It had specific practices, specific restraints, specific observations, things you should never do, things you should really, really should do. And to be honest, it was helpful for me to be in that closed loop system. I was safe. I felt like I was in a test tube. And inside of it, with a celibacy vow and a poverty vow and being very, very confined in a kind of a strict, almost a military-like system, I grew a lot. It was huge. It was wonderful until it wasn't. Until I could feel kind of a restlessness inside and hearing about other traditions. And well, what about that perspective? When I sort of slipped out to go to a Vipassana retreat, a kind of an orthodox Buddhist meditation retreat, oh my God, there's a whole other language, a whole other view, a whole other technology. And that was a big eye-opener for me. But the bottom line is that if you want to wake up, it's not for the faint of heart. Because it requires, as T.S. Eliot said, just to read this quote, one of my favorites, speaking about this like ephemeral sense of openness, like what is required to wake up, just to take in these words. Not known, because not looked for, but heard, half heard, in the stillness between two waves of the sea. Quick now, here, now, always. A condition of complete simplicity, costing not less than everything. And all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. But I love that phrase. A condition of complete simplicity, costing not less than everything. That's the price of entry. And so we have one particular tradition, the Zen tradition, that speaks of beginner's mind, about training yourself to see with fresh eyes. How do you view the world through beginner's mind? It's letting go of future, it's letting go of past, it's letting go of the story. It's just right now and here without a story. We've all done it. We all sense it. We all know it. The question is, how do we remember to wake up to it again and again and again? And so when we begin to take this seat of self-awareness and self-observation, inevitably you begin to notice how your mind is constantly generating stories. At the end of my mother's life, she was in deep dementia. And she would come and go out of recognizing if there was anyone else. But mostly, as she would talk, it was as if she was narrating a dream. And you know what it's like when you become aware of a dream? You're just taking absolutely disconnected dots and then trying to connect them into a story. At first, it was really upsetting for me because she really sounded Looney Tunes. Basically what I was getting was her kind of verbally recording this hypnagogic state of association, disassociation. But then I recognized the only way I could really be with her was to kind of mirror back her words and then realize this is what the mind does. This is what my mind does. It's simply taking information and trying to put it into a linear thread. Have you noticed this? How your mind is just making up a story about everything? And what I've noticed is that when I can watch my mind and I'm not identified with it, which is not all the time, my mind is taking information, it's trying to make sense of it. And of course, it's all designed around me. It's all designed around me and mine. And like in any dream, it's organized around the you that's having the experience. And if you notice it, if you're driving down the street, just driving down the street, first of all, there's that sense of don't die, don't die. You're scanning for danger. And then what I'll notice is like, oh, there's a Volkswagen, just like I had in college. Oh, that was a really good car. I really miss it. Cars, they're so complicated now. My friend Scott got a Tesla. Oh man, what an amazing car. I wonder how the stock is doing now. I should have paid more attention. I should really focus more on stocks and emerging technologies. That's really what I should be focusing on. Wow, look at the size of that pickup truck. Why do pickups drive so fast on the highway? Is it because they feel so invincible? My first car was a truck, and I so miss the 1963 Chevy Fleetside with a straight 6 and 3 on the tree. That was really fun. I used to change the oil and do all the maintenance on it. Oh, there's another VW like the one I had in college. On and on and on. Just what the mind does. And I love that meditation instruction. From time to time, you can ask yourself, am I dreaming? Because a lot of times we are. You're lost in a trance of thinking, of the mind simply taking information and stringing along in a narrative that keeps this whole story about you rolling along. So part of this practice is about immersing yourself in a space that's beyond the linear mind and then being informed by it. Quite often we start with concentration and then we open to mindfulness, which is kind of seeing into the conditioning of the mind. You're watching the mind, how the mind wanders, you bring it back. And then at some point in a meditation, in some meditations, you can then begin to turn your attention to unconditioned reality. Just relax and allow and let things be and just sense the presence that's holding all of this. And so much of our practice is informed by being in the conditioned mind. That is to say, all the features and facts that have influenced your sense of who you are, and then exploring the unconditioned mind or the unconditioned reality, just pure presence. And this is kind of the miracle, if you will, of waking up, of kind of waking out of the trance. You begin to see more into the nature of reality. You begin to see that conditioned things change. Anything you try to control or hold on to is going to have rope burn associated to it. And anything you can release and let go will have a sense of freedom. And you begin to see into the nature of you, how an element of you is conditioned and an element of you is utterly unconditioned. And so it takes courage. As we say in some forms of this practice, you begin again and again. You start again and again and again. Relax, concentrate, arrive, open, take the seat of the observer. Notice what's changing. Sense how you're relating to it. Sense if you can let it all be. And that's kind of how we move. But we can also begin to really sense to really take a closer look. So look at where you're stuck. Look at where you're tight. Look at what's holding on. Because it brings you right back to the essentials of this practice, the foundations that stress and suffering are part of the human experience. That if you look closely, you can find the cause of anything that's stressing you out. That it has to do with attachment, with clinging, with holding on. The third element, you can let go. You can find it, see it, sense it, know it, get familiar with it. Call on awareness and loving presence, and you may feel that which was holding on beginning to release and let go. You begin to sense that there are practices, observations that will increase your capacity to let go and to sense more and more of who you are informed by the unconditioned mind. So at some point, you begin to question the mind. Is every thought your mind generates valid? And for me, almost every time I do a retreat, at some point, I have this sense of like, oh my God, I don't have to believe every thought. Investigating thoughts can be so powerful. Recently, there was someone I was talking to who's been in lockdown. She has some underlying health concerns that require that she be very, very, very careful. And so she's living alone, and she's living in a small space, and she's aware that she feels isolated and lonely. She's aware that she has a tendency toward depression. And so she's kind of fighting that sense of loneliness and isolation, depression, doing what she can, getting outside and walking and being aware of diet and so forth, but downward spiral. So as we were exploring, as we were talking, she just said, this sense of like loneliness, I'd feel like I'll never meet anyone. I'm not going to find a life partner. And so we explored some of the questions that can help to sort of open up beliefs. And I said, well, is that true? That you're not going to find a life partner or people really, really close in your life? And she said, well, so far that seems to be evident, that I haven't found anything lasting. And it just fills me with a sense of despair. And I said, well, do you absolutely know for sure that belief is true? And she said, well, if you're pressing me, I don't absolutely know it's true, but all evidence is pointing toward it. So we kind of had that little bit of a crack in the wall in that belief. And so we did a little investigation and invited her. I invited her just to sense, when you think that thought, what's that like on the inside? She closed her eyes. Almost immediately, tears began to well up. And she began to describe this felt sense of a deep, deep clench inside, a very, very small place inside. And as she just sort of stayed with it, she could just feel it was a very young place of just not being deserving, of not getting the attention she was wanting and needing, and could just sense how young this very, very vulnerable place of loneliness and isolation and wanting and desire, but repeatedly not getting what she needed at a really, really young age. One of the most valuable things in this practice is calling on loving presence, calling on compassion and kindness. And as she did so, she began to explore just a sense of gentleness, a recognition that at this very young, vulnerable place inside of her really, really needed attention, affection, and love. And while she couldn't get it then, she could offer it now. And she went into an internal space of just holding that, sensing what it must be like to have a small child and just holding that child on her lap. And she began to feel a shift. She began to feel a greater sense of ease. As we explored a little more, I invited her to kind of come back to that belief, that her belief of I'll never meet anyone in life. And we explored how when she thinks that thought, even though she knows intellectually it's not true, that there is this whole felt sense, this whole sense of how that thought lives in her nervous system. And then we explored what I think of as the samurai sword inquiry. And I asked her, who are you without that thought? So kind of a pause and a shudder, and her whole countenance just lifted, her face lit up. You could feel kind of a radiance, kind of an ease. And she sensed for a few moments just a sense of who she would be without that thought. A sense of ease, a sense of trust, a sense of confidence, a sense of inner radiance, a sense of possibility. Questioning beliefs can be so powerful. The mind can be like a vice grip. But what if that vice grip isn't based in reality? This inquiry, these questions, can be so powerful, and they're beautifully articulated by Byron Katie and other traditions. And I think of them as glimpse practices. Because for her, it wasn't that the room filled with white light, the heavens opened, she was surrounded by angels, and that belief never came back again. But what she reported was that just having that sense shifted something for her. That when that belief showed up, that she was a little bit more inclined to recognize how it was trying to reinstall itself. My good friend and fellow teacher Stan Eisenstein talks of how when you're little, you're like this unprotected hard drive with no virus protection. And how these viruses just come and install themselves in the operating system. So when the time is right and you can begin to reflect on a core belief and whether it's true, and to sense how it lives on the inside and to sense who you are without it, that glimpse can change things. And then she said, now, sometimes, about 80% of the time, when I notice that thought, there's something in me that goes, wait a minute, we've encountered each other before. I don't have to believe that you're true. That's what's so powerful when you begin to shift your relationship with the mind, which usually has a narrative, and it's usually designed to preserve the sense that you are right. So maybe we can do just a very, very short little inquiry, just to kind of get a sense of this. If you like, you can close your eyes and you might take 3 slow, deep breaths. And we'll explore these 4 questions. And just to say that the timing may not be right for you, but just to kind of try them on. The first is just the sense, is there something that you're believing, that you're aware of? And Byron Katie talks of how one of the best ways you can reflect on this is to think of a complaint. Think of something you're complaining about, and then just sense, well, what am I believing about this? Well, I'll give you a few moments to kind of reflect on a complaint and a belief you might like to explore. If you can't think of a belief, you might just make one up just to try this on for the next few minutes. When you sense this belief, how crystalline can you make it? Could you imagine it in a phrase or a sentence? Could you see it written on a piece of paper? The first question to ask is Is it true? Do you absolutely know it's true? Quite often, we're pretty convinced it is. And it may take some digging to really sense if you absolutely, beyond question, know that this belief is true. And what you're looking for is the crack in the wall. Maybe 1%. It's not true. And the next inquiry is to sense, what is it like when you think this thought and you believe it? And primarily here, we want to let this be a somatic exploration. What does it feel like on the inside? Can you locate how your nervous system holds this belief when you believe it's true? Can you locate it? Where do you feel it? You might bring your hand to that point. When you think that thought and you believe it, what is it like at its most chronic, at its worst? If you were to exaggerate it, what does that feel like? Are there any emotional words that resonate with this feeling inside? Is there a sense of how old this is? Can you trace this back? And you might sense, is it possible to hold this in some kind of tenderness, some kind of compassion or kindness? What does it need? How does it want you to be with it right now? And you might refresh this inquiry, again, reflecting on this belief or thought. Knowing intellectually it's not 100% true, but just sensing when you do believe it, of how it lives on the inside, how it affects your worldview. And you might let yourself inquire now, who are you without that thought? This may have been just a glimpse. There are more steps that can be helpful in this practice, and I encourage you to check out the work of Byron Katie, Byronkatie. There can be tremendous power in questioning the mind. You may know the classic, oh, if you like, you can open your eyes. I hope that was helpful. Just a very, very small little glimpse. There's that classic story. I'm not going to tell the whole thing, because I'm pretty sure everyone on the planet has heard it, of the farmer who has 3 wild horses come into his corral, and all his neighbors say, "Oh, what good news!" And he'll say, "Good news, bad news, who knows?" And then the son is working with the horses, and he falls and breaks his leg, and the neighbors say, "What bad news?" "Oh, good news, bad news." And then the army comes for conscripts, and his son's leg is broken, and he can't join the army. Oh, what good news, bad news, who knows? And I I always think that story should have at some point where the neighbors say, "Well, that's really bad news," and the farmer says, "Yeah, that's just really bad news." But the truth is, we don't know. And not knowing can be something that can be a little bit and a lot bit liberating. When you look at how hardship develops new skills, new resilience, opens up new possibilities, good news, bad news, who knows? My father grew up in poverty, was drafted into World War II, was thrown right in the front lines, was wounded twice, horrible PTSD, bad news. Good news, the GI Bill. Graduated from college, went to graduate school, became a college professor, became an advocate for peace and reconciliation. A young woman was abused at home, crushing low self-esteem. Ugh, bad news. Well, she devotes her life to helping others and gets trained, becomes a voice for other people. Patrice Cullors, Alicia Garza, and Opal Tometi felt they had no voice in the world as Black women and were absolutely crushed and devastated at the killing of Trayvon Martin. And they founded this little organization called Black Lives Matter. And now thousands upon thousands of people feel they have a voice when they didn't have one before. They become a force in the world. By the way, when I was doing a little research on Black Lives Matter, I came across a headline in the form of a question. And the headline is Black Lives Matter a Marxist organization? Feeding our desire to know. So the mind seeks understanding, and it labels things as good or bad. And when it comes to mechanics and science, it's amazing what the mind can do. You can get into a long tube with wings, fly anywhere on the planet, and while you're in that tube, you can be emailing people on the ground anywhere on Earth. It's crazy, isn't it? But when it comes to liberation, when the mind is trying to make sense of life through this lens of the linear rational mind, understanding is not the answer. In fact, Werner Erhard, the founder of EST, famously said, understanding is the Booby Prize. I love that phrase. Understanding is the Booby Prize. So not knowing does not mean you don't know. It doesn't require you to forget everything you've known or suspend interpretations of a situation. Not knowing means not being limited by what we know, or holding on to what we know very lightly, and to be ready for it to be different. Maybe things are this way. Maybe they're not. And so embracing the sense of not knowing can be a really interesting way of exploring your life. And there's this beautiful piece here about embracing what we could call don't know mind. Where do you come from? Don't know. Where are you going? What's your destiny? Don't know. This is kind of the essence of beginner's mind, kind of reclaiming beginner's mind. And just as a little taste, if you like, you can close your eyes. This will be just a short little reflection. And take 3 slow, deep breaths. And notice the sounds around you. 360 degrees. There is a quality of your mind that seeks to understand. And so without you even knowing it, it's going to notice the location of the sound. It's going to give it a name, and it will determine whether it's going to kill you or not. And you might just notice that nature of the labeling, kind of controlling, linear, rational mind. And now, if you would, we'll explore a little bit of beginner's mind. Imagine that you could be open to the sounds, but have no story as to what they are, no story of their past or their future. And sense, if you can, just maybe the next little while, if you can experience the sounds as just pure vibration without a story. Shunryu Suzuki, a famous Zen teacher, said that in the expert's mind, there are very few possibilities. In the beginner's mind, infinite possibility. If you like, you can open your eyes. Embracing not knowing is embracing the sense of beginner's mind. Letting go of history, just sensing the moment as if it were the first time. You know the joy you take when you see puppies playing, when you see children discovering something and they're filled with a sense of awe. That's available to you, available to all of us in the moment. That when you can let go of the past, let go of the future, let go of the self, there is this very innocent arising of the moment. And this is a little bit of what it means to be immersing ourselves in the unconditioned. If just for a few moments, sensing your life without a story, and letting that sense of openness and freshness inform the conditioned. As you sort of take that sense of freedom and innocence and the mystery and let it come into your activities. And one of my favorite cliched phrases from Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the founder of Transcendental Meditation, he said, you water the root and enjoy the fruit. Every time you can allow yourself to open to the moment in the mystery, it'll nourish every part of you. So the mind wants three things. It wants more than three, but we'll just say for now it wants three things. The mind wants to live forever. The mind wants to control. And the mind wants more and more attention, affection, and love. And that's fine. It's doing its job. But when you sense the fact that all conditioned things will pass away, that there is so much beyond your control, and that insatiable desire for attention, affection, and love outside of you will never be fulfilled, that can be kind of terrifying. But it can also be freeing, because it opens you to the mystery. When I mentioned earlier, Adida, with his phrase of how no one knows what a single thing is or how a single thing came to be, he went on to say, this becomes an invitation to love the mystery. That if you can love the mystery, you're awake. You're open to that infinite field of possibility. And so when you reflect, the fact that this talk is going to end in about 4 minutes, what would most enliven you? If you were to drop the need of self-improvement, what you know would be good for you, if you were just simply to open to the mystery and not knowing what's next, what do you sense would be most enlivening? If you like, you can close your eyes. And we'll close with a short little reflection here. You might take 3 slow, deep breaths. And just sense this quality of not knowing, of allowing the mystery, allowing the moment to be as it is. And let yourself resonate with these words from Tilopa. Let go of what has passed. Let go of what may come. Let go of what is happening now. Don't try to figure anything out. Don't try to make anything happen. Relax right now and rest. If you like, you can gently deepen the breath. If you like, you can open the eyes. Some of the deepest teachings in this tradition come from embracing a sense of balance. To have a sense of what you want. To have a sense of cultivating the resilience that will help you to move through all the trials that get in the way of what you know you truly want. Super powerful. Developing concentration and discipline, really, really powerful. Developing strong mindfulness, the lens of perception that's not clouded by greed or hatred or delusion, very, very powerful. And at the same time, at its essence, it's so powerful from time to time to remember that no one knows what a single thing is or how a single thing came to be. And that perhaps in its essence, all we can do is love the mystery. Thank you so much for your kind attention. May you and your not knowing have a wonderful time from here on. Many, many thanks and many, many blessings to you.